Jude Bellingham, one of Real Madrid's most expensive signings, was brought in with the expectation that he would become one of the defining midfielders of his generation. Since arriving in Spain, his journey has been anything but straightforward, a tale of contrasts across 3 seasons. His first year was dazzling. Bellingham lit up the Bernabeu, driving the team to major honors, La Liga and the Champions League. But the second year was far less glamorous, marked by frustrations, tactical hiccups, and a side that seemed to lose its rhythm. And now, in his 3rd season, the story has taken yet another twist. Somehow, the Englishman has become an accidental obstacle in Xabi Alonso's attempts to reshape Los Blancos in his own vision. Madrid's latest outing, a 5-0 demolition of Kairat Almaty, a Kazakh debutant in the Champions League, hardly offered much of a test. The gulf in quality was simply too wide. Fatigue from the long journey might have been a factor, but Los Blancos breezed through regardless. Bellingham, returning from injury, was given a late cameo from the 85th minute. He pressed, dribbled, even grabbed a goal, all in search of a mental spark to kickstart his comeback and reclaim his place in the starting 11. It came just days after a subdued performance in the Madrid derby, and yet few were quick to criticize. How harsh would it be to judge a player still feeling his way back after injury? If anything, the murmurs were softer. Perhaps Alonso had rushed him back a touch too soon. But then again, when it comes to midfielders with a master's understanding of the game, there are few better judges than Alonso himself. The real issue, though, runs deeper. Bellingham's return has created a tactical headache. Xabi Alonso has been laying down a new blueprint, one that was beginning to click. And now the reintroduction of his star midfielder threatens to upset that balance. And as if the tactical dilemma at Madrid weren't enough, Bellingham's troubles extend beyond Spain. His recent return is all the more remarkable given what he has been through. The Englishman had only just recovered from shoulder surgery, an operation that sidelined him immediately after the FIFA Club World Cup. And yet, despite being declared fit, he found himself overlooked by Thomas Tuchel for England's upcoming fixtures against Wales and Latvia. Tuchel explained his decision bluntly. While Bellingham was technically fit, he was still searching for rhythm after his layoff. In truth, the manager never had any intention of rushing the 22-year-old back into the national setup. The move only deepened the sense of frustration surrounding the midfielder, left on the fringes at both club and country. With the 2026 World Cup looming ever closer, rediscovering his form quickly is not just vital for his Real Madrid career, but also for England's pursuit of their ultimate dream on the biggest stage. When Jude Bellingham first arrived at the Bernabeu, he was expected to become the long-term heir to Real Madrid's legendary midfield trio of Casemiro, Kroos, and Modric, a golden generation whose brilliance had brought endless glory, but whose years at the top were starting to show. Casemiro's departure was covered by Perez's investment in Camavinga and Tchouaméni, while Valverde thrived as a tireless right-sided shuttler. Kroos and Modric, meanwhile, rotated as deep-lying orchestrators, continuing to dictate the rhythm. Bellingham was brought in to fit this mold, but Carlo Ancelotti, still in charge at the time, quickly realized something different about him. Bellingham wasn't a metronome in the middle. He had a natural instinct to drive forward, to attack, to break beyond the line. Then came Benzema's exit, and with Perez refusing to buy a replacement striker while waiting for Kylian Mbappe, a bold new tactical experiment was born. Instead of plugging in another traditional number 9, Bellingham slid into the role. Real Madrid's 4-3-3 began to tilt into a diamond-shaped 4-4-2, with Bellingham drifting between midfield and attack. He offered Benzema's link-up play, the ability to receive with his back to goal, while adding his own explosive runs into the box and a lethal finishing touch. The gamble paid off spectacularly. Madrid lifted both La Liga and the Champions League, while Bellingham himself delivered a stunning 23 goals and 13 assists, a dream debut season in Spain. The second year, however, proved far more complicated. The numbers were still strong, 15 goals and 15 assists, but the balance of the team had shifted. Mbappe finally arrived, while Toni Kroos, the brain of Madrid's midfield, retired. Suddenly, Ancelotti had to reshuffle his pieces, experimenting to find the right chemistry. For Bellingham, that meant no fixed home on the pitch. One week he was the attacking midfielder, the next he dropped deeper into central roles. At times he was pushed to the left, occasionally even filling gaps on the right. That constant shuffling inevitably dulled his edge. The farther he drifted from his natural space, the harder it was to showcase his best qualities. Still, with his immense talent and relentless mentality, the Englishman kept delivering for the team, often sacrificing comfort for the greater good. Real Madrid's midfield conundrum has lingered into the present day, even after Xabi Alonso stepped in to replace Carlo Ancelotti. Throughout the summer and into the opening stretch of the season, the Spanish coach has searched tirelessly for a structure, a lineup he can truly trust. Each match has been a lesson, each experiment a clue. Take Mbappe and Vinicius, for example. Their overlapping tendencies mean the 3-4-3 that worked so brilliantly at Leverkusen is almost impossible to replicate at Madrid with such different personnel. So Alonso has tested alternatives. Aurelien Tchouaméni, shuttling between defense and midfield as a hybrid anchor. Arda Güler deployed as a deep-lying playmaker. Gonzalo Garcia tried as the lone striker. And most intriguingly, Mbappe himself reimagined as a central forward, operating with the freedom and range once offered by Karim Benzema. But time isn't on Alonso's side. He needs a settled backbone fast, with El Clasico looming on the horizon and the first real test, the Madrid derby, already ending in a bruising defeat. Adding to the challenge, Jude Bellingham has been absent at the start of the campaign through injury, leaving a creative void. Tactically, Alonso has blended positional play with fluid interplay, moving away from a single midfield conductor. There is no Kroos-like figure dictating every tempo. Instead, the attacking hub has become the ever-shifting movements of Kylian Mbappe. His drifting shapes Madrid's structure, with teammates adjusting around him to maintain the familiar 3-2-5 shape of positional football. For instance, when Mbappe drifts wide, Vinicius cuts inside to occupy the central lanes, while the Frenchman tucks into the half space. Depending on whether Madrid line up in a 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2, the second striker or attacking midfielder occupies the middle, the right winger drifts inside, and the fullback pushes high. The same pattern unfolds on the opposite flank. Only the two central midfielders remain fixed, acting as stabilizers in the middle of the park. That system makes Madrid's attacking firepower heavily reliant on their flanks. With Tchouaméni sitting deep as the defensive pivot and Valverde covering ground like a tireless box-to-box engine, the question inevitably resurfaces. Who will fill the void left by Toni Kroos, the irreplaceable brain of this team? What has surprised everyone and injected a sense of freshness into Real Madrid's play has been the expanded, evolving role of Kylian Mbappe. Against mid-table La Liga sides, still struggling with inferior squads, that innovation has been almost impossible to counter. But against Atletico Madrid, it quickly became a problem. Diego Simeone spotted the pattern and responded with his trademark pragmatism. He crowded the middle with 3 or 4 players, often in a 5-3-2 setup. That forced Madrid's attacks wide, making their play predictable, since the two central midfielders were far more about power and industry than invention. From there, Atleti pressed, intercepted, and countered. To be fair, that derby was also shaped by Julian Alvarez's brilliance in open play and Atleti's ruthless use of set pieces, but it offered a clear blueprint for other opponents to follow. Xabi Alonso has tried to counter this by occasionally inserting a more creative midfielder into the center, hoping for someone who can inject unpredictability into Madrid's possession. But within the double pivot structure he has relied on since the start of the season, that forces a compromise. Valverde would have to give way, since Tchouaméni's defensive shield in front of the back line remains non-negotiable. On paper, Jude Bellingham was signed for exactly this role, a midfielder with enough physical presence to compete, who could also contribute to build-up play. But in truth, his natural instincts are not to orchestrate from deep. Instead, Bellingham thrives when he pulls into advanced half spaces, receives between the lines, and drives forward. Since his arrival at the Bernabeu, he has morphed into more of a number 10, or even a deep-lying number 9, than a traditional central midfielder. Asking him to sit deeper, holding position in a rigid double pivot, goes against his nature and blunts his impact. The problem is compounded by Mbappe's evolution during Bellingham's injury absence. The Frenchman has grown into the very role Bellingham prefers, dropping between the lines to receive and initiate attacks. That overlap leaves Madrid with a positional clash. And while Arda Güler can slot in with more flexibility, dropping deeper, acting as a connector, Bellingham's return raises the tactical question Madrid must now solve. Can these two stars truly coexist in the same space? For Jude Bellingham, this isn't a new story. We saw it at the Euros too. When Harry Kane and Phil Foden operated in similar spaces, England's star-studded attack looked anything but synchronized. Too many players crowding the same zone, and the system lost its flow. Bellingham, of course, isn't someone you can just shove out wide. Those flanks are already spoken for. Vinicius has his name etched in stone. Rodrigo is waiting in line, and others lurk behind. More importantly, pushing Bellingham out there would be nothing short of a waste of his unique gifts. So what about the classic 4-3-3? It's a question many have asked, but that shape demands clarity. A destroyer, a playmaker, a box-to-box runner. Someone always has to sacrifice. To Alonso's credit, he hasn't been blind to the issue. In fact, he confronted it from the moment he stepped in. Early on, he rolled out a 3-5-2, sliding Tchouaméni into a hybrid center-back role, pushing up and dropping deep depending on the phase of play. It was a clever tweak designed to fit 3 midfielders, giving Bellingham the license to express himself. The problem? 3 at the back heaped pressure on the flanks and, worse still, slowed the upward curve of Mbappe's evolution into Madrid's central talisman, a trade-off that, in the long run, seemed too costly. Now, Alonso finds himself with a month to experiment, with El Clasico looming on the horizon. The real test is not just about tactics, but about transformation. Can he turn what feels like a roadblock into a stepping stone? The question hangs heavy over the Bernabeu. Can Xabi Alonso unlock Bellingham's best role without tearing apart the structure that is already in place?